All right, series and cylinders bodybuilding. Here we go. We have a bodybuilding icon, Mel Chancey. What's up, Big Mel?
You doing, brother? How are you?
I'm doing good. Thank you very much for coming on, man, and doing this show.
Well, we've been talking for a hot minute, you and I, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
going back
Actually,
and forth, and
yeah. I was trying. Yeah, it's been like yeah, I guess a few years now. We kind of were
yeah,
going back and forth. Yeah,
yeah.
and a testament to you. You always got back to me.
You
Every
know,
single time I reached out, you always got back to me, and you don't know me from Adam.
yeah, yeah. Thank you for that. And I did to everybody. It was funny, John. After I did the John Bernthal podcast, and we came out, and you seen that 2.5 hour one and my life story, and then talking at the end about the project with Dwayne Johnson and my life story and the movie and the documentary. Every podcaster was hitting me up.
Yeah, right.
And then we all sat down as the team over at Seven Buck Production as the team through Dwayne Johnson and his brother-in-law Hiram and his Danny Garcia. Um, and we were like, okay, let's hold back on some of the podcasts because you don't want to blow the story out too much,
Right.
right?
Right.
What we're doing. Funny thing we say in the house, I gave out so many rain checks to people
Yeah,
that
yeah,
my
yeah.
wife was like, "You're going to be doing podcasts for a year straight, right, babe?" And I said, "Yeah, that's okay." And it's cool because I talked to Bill Stacks. We see
Yes.
Stacks on there,
Yeah.
and I gave everybody the rain check, which is cool. So I'm looking forward to them one day. But it's exciting because I watch your stuff, and I see not long ago you had Pee Wee on, and
Yeah.
and I watch your bodybuilding stuff because I always
Thank you
know
very much. I
I know
appreciate
the
that.
cats you always got on there.
Yeah, no, I've it's the bodybuilding channel. I started about 2 years ago, and I've it's really, and that's why I call the channel Serious and Silliness because, there are times where you're goofing off,
Yeah.
and if you ever watch when Lee Priest is on,
Oh,
it's you can't do all he does is goof off,
yeah.
so
You
that's
had him on. You just were telling me you had just had him on recently, right?
yeah, like yesterday. Yeah,
You didn't air that yet, right?
no, that's on. Yeah, it was on
Oh,
this
it's on.
morning.
Okay, I didn't even
Yeah,
know if you've seen it, but yeah, I know Leafs from the middle '90s when Lee
yeah.
was Lee. I've known him for so long.
What's great about Lee Priest is that I mean he's Lee Priest, he's one of the greatest bodybuilders that ever lived, right?
Great, yeah,
And he if he really considers you a friend, you can't get rid of him. Like
yeah,
he right, like he could go on any bodybuilding show he wants. He can go on
yeah.
RX Muscle. He can go on Hostel. He can go on Cutlers. He can go on Nick Strength to Pack. He can go on any major bodybuilding show. But he just likes me, and he comes on because he likes me, and he considers me a friend.
Mike Matarazzo, if you remember Mike, the big
Sure.
calves. That's
Yeah.
who. That's who introduced me to this industry, bro.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
I mean,
let's
I
get
was
into
a fan.
a lot of people, unless you are a hardcore bodybuilding fan, a lot of people don't realize the impact you have had on bodybuilding and how much you're into it.
Yeah.
So, as far as bodybuilding goes, let's start from the beginning. What got you really into training?
So when I was young, and watching the morning cartoons and everything like that, I fell in love with He-Man. I
Yeah,
was just a He-Man fan, that long blonde hair, and I used to have what's white, whatever have I've left, but I used to have that
yeah.
longer blonde hair when I was young, and the Italian skin and tan, and I just loved the muscle on He-Man. So that's kind of what got me into it. And then my next door neighbor, who I'm dear friends with to today still, um, in Chicago, there he bought a weight set, and it was when the sand was in it, bro. Remember the
Oh God,
sticky
yeah,
sand,
yeah,
John? I mean, I'm what 6 years older than you now, right?
yeah.
I think so, 56 or 50. So, and I started lifting weights in his basement at about 14. And I just naturally started growing a little bit, right?
Right.
I was already 5'10. I was about 160 pounds. I was that lean kid, and I
Yeah.
just started growing and just squatting and benching, flipping through all the magazines to my guys that I looked up to, Lee Haney and Lee Labrada. Dorian Yates was a little bit later in life when I grew, got years older. But
Right.
when I was a teenager, it was all them. Lee Haney, Lee Labrada, you know what I mean? All them old school guys, and I was flipping the magazines and doing the workouts that they were doing and everything and just started growing. And that's where the passion started. And then when I was 16, I joined up in a gym that was right in my neighborhood. I walked to the gym. It was 4 minute walk from my mom and dad's house. They gave you a key. It was ten
Oh,
dollars for
I
the month.
remember those. The key. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
was a garage old barn gym in our
Right.
neighborhood and stuff. And as the story goes, that's where I met the bikers.
Right.
They were
Right.
training.
Right. Right. Yeah.
So, but that's what got me bit by the bodybuilding was the whole He-Man thing. And I was like, man, I want to look like that dude on
Yeah.
TV, the cartoon.
Of course, yeah. We were all influenced by He-Man and Stallone and Schwarzenegger and Hulk
Yeah.
Hogan and yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
of
Yeah.
course. So, I was a
I didn't
wrestling.
know I didn't know you were Italian. Chancey doesn't sound like an Italian last name.
My mom, Donatelli.
Ah,
My mom was 100% Italian. My dad was like, German and some Scandinavian in him. He used
all
to
right.
say he was like a mutt, he had a few
Yeah.
different nationalities, little Swedish in him. So that's the Chansey name. But my mom, so, half Italian. But
Yeah.
everybody tells me they're like, man, you got that dark Italian
Yeah.
skin.
Yeah. Yeah.
Got out of it.
Yeah. Well, I'm full Italian. I don't have that dark skin. It's unbelievable.
It's weird. Some are different, right? I see some
Yeah.
Italians, they don't do good in the sun. And then I see Italians like me. I go out in the sun, bro, and I put extra virgin olive oil on my face
Oh
and neck.
wow.
So most people burn, right? They'd have
Yeah.
I'd
I
be
got to put on
53
that sunblock and
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know.
So I got the skin that holds the Florida sun.
All right. So you were 16, you joined your first gym, you start training. Um, do you compete or it's just I want to see how big and strong I can get? Because back then, I'm assuming it's like, the late 80s, early 90s, whatnot. That
Yeah,
was the goal. See how big and strong you can get. And the guys walking around in those old school gyms, they were monsters.
yeah, they were big, and that had to be. I was born in 69, 79. I'm 10, 7, 81, 2, 3, 84, 85. I'm
Hmm.
16 years old, in these gyms with these guys. And the two guys that were always training when I was, it was a small gym. Maybe if they had a dozen members through the different times, that's all it
Right.
had.
Yeah.
It was on the property of their home. It was called Jay's Body Shop. And the
Okay.
guy who owned it, it was his family's house. He made this barn where you can go train, sand weights, sore cover weights, just old school stuff. And these two dudes were always in there when the time I trained. I like to go like at, 5:30, 6 o'clock, 6:30 at nighttime, and they were in there. They were construction dudes. They poured concrete, both of these guys.
Hmm.
And one was 10 years older than me, and one was 15 years older than me. And then when I got in the gym, and they would say, "Hey kid, do roll like this. Hey kid, pull these down this way." And they were
Right.
showing me, John, how to train, because I was just taking them from the magazines. We didn't have no internet, right? So
Yes. Yes.
couldn't see videos. I was just taking it, watching what they were doing. Okay, this many sets, and just took a liking to me like that. I didn't know who they were. I mean, I knew their names and everything like that. And I tell people it wasn't until about 8, 9 months later I found out that they were both members of a motorcycle club called the Hell's Henchmen,
Okay.
which, later we turned into Hell's Angels. We switched and merged with the Hell's Angels. So that's where that started. Not only did they show me the weights, then when I seen that they had motorcycles one day with their patch on, I was like, wow, that was pretty cool.
Right.
At the time, I just got kicked out of high school at that exact 16-year mark because
Oh, really? I kicked out of high school. Yeah.
I punched the principal and
Oh,
broke part of my hand because who knew how to punch at 16, broke
yeah.
part of my hand. So they threw me out of school. I thought I was going to lay up in my family's pool, John, and just chill out because my family had a big pool in the yard. And my uncle had owned a concrete company, same as that these boys were doing.
Hmm.
And my mom had some work boots, and after about 2 weeks, and I go to them, and she goes, "Oh, you're going to work. Like you're not going to lay around this house and do nothing here. You're going to work with your uncle." So I started pouring concrete at 16,
Right. 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 Right.
same that these boys were doing. So now I was able to buy my Harley, able to buy my first IROC. I'm 17 years old now, and
Really?
I'm making money, right? You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? So I went down. The boys, the two boys brought me down to the clubhouse. I got to see, meet all these other Hell's Henchmen and stuff, and have some fun at their parties and everything like that. And then that's how I ended up becoming in. When I first got into the motorcycle scene, I was a Hell's Henchman
Right.
for probably 5 years.
Hmm.
And then we merged with the Hells Angels, and we became the first Midwestern Hells Angels, Chicago,
Right. Right.
Rockland,
Right.
and
Right.
South
Right.
Bend. Done three Hells Henchmen chapters, and I was the part of that whole merger.
Oh, very cool. Okay.
That's how the story started from the gym, basically. You know what I
Really?
mean?
That's so funny, man. Well, you know what's funny is that it was a little different where I grew up because I went to, gyms kind of like similar to that, the old school hardcore gym. And I was lived in Brooklyn, and then I had moved to Staten Island. By the time I was, 16, I was in Staten Island, and it wasn't the biker guys; it was all the mafia guys. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
one of the guys that owned the gym got arrested, and then two. Then I remember there was two guys in the parking lot after he got arrested. One guy had the row, the lat pull down bar, and the
Uh,
other guy had the chain for the weighted dips, and he's just flipping it around. They had to call the cops, and it
in
was
the gym. In the gym, he was doing
oh,
it, huh?
it was in the parking lot outside the gym.
Jeez.
Yeah, and it was, that was kind of everywhere, right? But my father and my brothers always like made sure that I, stayed away from them, and they always were like on top of me, not to, they liked the fact that I was going to the gym, and then I had friends that were good kids, and they kind of always, kept me away from that. But
Yeah, yeah.
um, I so last night after we talked, we had a great conversation last night. Um, I looked up some pictures of you in your prime, and you were you were a big fucking dude. Like how big did you get? What was your peak weight?
So we got a funny story that all my friends tell that knew me back in the day because they were always wanting to see the scale with me. So I got up to 293. And
Wow.
at 293, man, I was a little, you probably seen some of the pictures. I wasn't, crazy bloated. I wasn't have abs like I was going to get on a bodybuilding stage. I was thick,
Yeah.
and I was thick front to back, real
Right.
thick, because I trained like a bodybuilder and I didn't miss gym sessions and I could eat. Matarazzo is the one who taught me back in the day about all the steak. And for 15 years, John, I probably ate every bit of a pound and a half to 2 pounds of filet red meat a day,
Wow. Okay.
every day. Probably why I got some of the stent and a little bit of the heart disease, but anyways, I could eat. So I was training, eating, growing, pouring concrete. My body was just growing. By the time I was 19 and took my first shot of Deca that I got from a local doctor in our neighborhood back in
Yeah,
the day,
back then it was legal. Yes. Yeah.
he could do it out of his office and stuff. I took my first shot of Deca because the fellows were showing me about it and stuff. And I
Yeah.
was a little nervous. I didn't know nothing about the hormones back then. And
Sure.
reading all the different side effects on anabolic steroids. And one of them's like in death and cardio. And I'm like, whoa, hold on. Like,
Yeah.
kind of freaked me out a minute. Right.
Yeah.
But then once that's when I wanted to start studying and see what they were doing. So there was a doctor in the local area in Chicago, and he would give the boys, DECA, testosterone. And it
Right.
was funny because the first time they hooked me up with him, I never had met him. I went in there. He's long passed away. His name was Larry Lerner, Dr. Lerner. And
Yeah.
I'd see three or four big dudes sitting up in the waiting room. They were all like 250 at the time. And then I'd see a little old lady with a broken arm.
Yeah.
He was a normal doctor, but he'd give you DECA, right?
Yeah.
So once I started on some straight DECA, no testosterone, because I was still only 19, boy, John, my body started filling out.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was training as hard as any probably pro bodybuilder. I was training with Mike. I was training, let me rewind. That was before I met Mike. I was training just like them guys were training.
Yeah.
So when I first met Mike, and I was flipping the magazines to Mike, and I first met Mike in Golds and Venice Beach in California. The guy Ed Connors who used to own Pete Grimkowski, they were the Golds owners.
Yes. Yeah.
And Ed Connors flew me out there. I was already, the leader of the Angels, and I met Mike. Mike lived in one of Ed's houses. And the first time I trained with Mike and we trained back, he said, "Holy cow!" Mike still calls me, my old nickname was Road in the club.
Really?
And until he passed away, that was the only guy, him and Ed Connors. Ed still calls me Road because he knew me from them days,
Yeah. 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 How did you wind up in Venice Beach, California from Chicago?
So the Olympia was in Chicago, and I think I'm going to say in about 95 or 96 before
Okay.
it permanently went. It traveled. It
Yeah.
was in Chicago this year. I showed up with a bunch of the guys in the club because I was a fan and I wanted to see the bodybuilding.
Right.
And Ed Connors was there. And the Gold's Gym that I trained at in Chicago, I was very tight with the owner and his wife. Well, after I was talking to everybody, he introduced me to Ed. And when I walked away, Ed said to Tony, the owner, he goes, "Hey, how do you know that guy?" And Tony goes, "This is the franchise owner." And Tony goes, "Hey, Ed, I know he looks a little crazy and everything like that." He goes, Mel's one of the nicest guys, man. He trains at our gym and he's a good friend to everybody.
Yeah.
And Ed goes, I want him on the Gold's Gym calendar. So he got my number. I talked to Ed. Ed flew me out to California. I got to, see him, see Venice Beach and everything. And Mike Matarazzo lived in one of Ed's houses on the beach, and Flex Wheeler lived upstairs.
Oh, wow.
I got
Okay.
to meet Mike, Flex, Paul Dillett, Rico McClinton, all them old 90 dudes
Yeah.
right in the gym. So me and Mike hit it off. Mike was a Boston guy. I was out in Boston, Mass a lot, and in Salem and everything with the club.
Okay.
So I knew the spot he used to bounce at. We were like, he goes, I knew I used to hear about you and stuff. And Michael became a family member to me. And so the first time I trained with him, he was like, dang, Road, man, we put a back workout on. I mean, hard.
Yeah. Yeah.
And now by that time, I'm 20 something years old, 25, years old when I met Mike, or 24. And now I have some years under my belt of doing some DECA, eating some D-ball. I didn't
Yeah.
get into testosterone until I was a little bit later in life, because I was growing and the fellas were like, you don't need any more.
Yeah.
That little bit was going a far way on me.
Yeah.
And I was running the club and eating and stuff like that, living that bodybuilding lifestyle. I trained wherever I got into town. I made sure that I found a hardcore gym, and I trained every day when I was on the road with the club. Every day I was supposed to. I didn't, if I needed to miss a day, it was no
Right.
big deal. I
Right.
wasn't a pro bodybuilder, but I trained like one.
Yeah. It's therapy. It really is. You know what's funny is that what a lot of young kids don't know, like when they're in their 20s, your testosterone level is already through the roof. It's already the highest it's ever going to be. So the idea of DECA and D-balls is actually a really good concept, because you don't need any more testosterone. When I was 21 was the first time I did my first cycle, and again, I didn't know what I was doing. I was just listening to guys in the gym.
Yeah, the
What's
bro
funny
science.
Yeah, what's funny is I was going to a Gold's Gym. There was a Gold's Gym in Staten Island that was owned by the mafia. It was unbelievable, right? And uh I used I'll never forget it, Sus, DECA, and D balls.
Yeah, yeah.
And I would say the first month I blew up. It was unbelievable. My sex drive was through the roof. And then all of a sudden, right? All of a sudden, I have no sex drive. I'm not growing anymore. I don't know what's going on. And I panic because, I have a girlfriend. Things aren't working. I'm like, what the hell's going
Right.
on?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I actually spoke to, believe it or not, Dave Palumbo had a seminar in Queens. And because this was already like, the late 90s. So I go with my friend and I talk to him to see what happened. And he's the one that explained you don't you don't need that much testosterone. You're either gonna use no testosterone or very little, or you're gonna use a tremendous amount to make up for what you
They're going to
lost. Because
shut down.
right. And I didn't know that, because when you're 23, 22, the fact that you gave yourself 500 milligrams of testosterone, your natural testosterone is going to shut down like that, because it realizes it's getting it from someplace else. And
So
yeah, go ahead.
funny story is I met Chad Nichols young, Kim Shavesky, Miss Olympia at the time.
Oh, yeah,
I met Chad, who's now my, 20 something years later is my dear friend, Kim, his boys. So when I had met Chad, he was doing Ronnie Coleman. He was, at the top of everything that he was doing, right?
yeah,
And it was before Ronnie even won at Olympia. He had Flex Wheeler, actually. Flex
yeah,
gave Chad to Ronnie, and then Ronnie just surpassed everything.
yeah,
So he was the one who told me, you're taking DECA, you're taking some D-ball, you're going to start on a little test. He's like, you have to run HCG all the time. And I go, wait a minute. I thought you just run HCG to clean out from a cycle. He goes, that's what everybody thinks.
yeah.
Don't let your FSH and LH, as I know with a hormone company, them are the two hormones in your testicles. Don't let them shut down.
Right.
Keep stimulated the whole time, so you're getting your own natural testosterone,
Yeah.
because you put some synthetic in you, it's in the bloodstream, your FSH and LH, your body knows it doesn't have to produce as much, because that's why now from a hormone company, you get testosterone, and anastrozole, an anti-estrogen pill,
That's
and
right.
HCG.
Yeah.
So he showed me that HCG trick of taking 200 units 3-4 times a week. And bro, it was like I jumped on some growth hormone.
Yeah. Yeah. It's true. It's like these
My
little
body
things.
just,
Yeah.
just responded, bro,
Yeah. It's I've gotten relatively friendly with Dave Palumbo and Jason Arns, and
Yeah,
they
two good
really
guys.
know they really know what they're talking about, and I've learned so much from them. And you're 100% right, especially when you're young,
Yeah,
especially when you're a young guy. I mean, you really do. If you're gonna decide to do it, you really do your research. Talk to people who know. Don't talk to the idiots in the gym.
oh,
It's unbelievable. And here's
I was blessed with getting Chad. He was one of the best.
yeah, I mean, Chad is like the guru, right?
Yeah,
But here's the other thing you mentioned before. This is funny that you mentioned. You mentioned before that the guys in the gym taught you. Two friends in the gym taught you, and I go to two different gyms. So I go to Strong and Shapely, which is more of a hardcore gym in New
yeah.
Jersey, and then I go to an LA Fitness. And either one, Strong and Shapely, they know what they're doing for the most part. But even then, you see young kids and they have no idea what they're doing, and nobody's helping them. It is a completely different. It is there is no camaraderie in the gym anymore. And when I see young kids, especially like high school, college, and they're doing something wrong, I will try to help them and say it. And 99% of the time, they're grateful because they want to learn, they want to know.
So I
And
mean,
nobody, and you're right. All we had was the magazines, and it gave you like the step by step, right? You
yeah,
open up the magazine and like Matarazzo will be doing lap pull downs, and it gives you like step by step. And another thing is nobody knows how to spot anymore because spotting was taught in the gym by the guys, and I see kids they have no clue. And if I'm going on a heavy, like I don't train as heavy as I used to, but for me it's heavy. And I look around the gym, I gotta look for somebody like like somebody that looks like you,
that's
or who.
confident,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Because nobody knows how to. I mean, it's unbelievable, but that's just there used to be this great camaraderie in the gym. Everybody knew everybody. Nobody had iPod, earpods. It was just music going, and you were training, and people were teaching you. The older guys were teaching you. That doesn't happen anymore. And it's
When
kind.
we owned Second Chance from 2015 to 17, I came down to Florida and I bought an old Gold's Gym, 14,000 square feet.
Wow.
Switched it around, called it Second Chance. 950 members we bought it with. We sold it with 2,000 members, right? That's why we sold it, because 2 years after launching it, I had Phil there, I had Jay there, I had Branch there.
Yeah.
Jay Cutler did my grand opening. Phil came and stayed with me for a week to train for the Olympia. Branch came and stayed with me for a week. I trained with him for the Olympia.
That's
So
fantastic.
all these members from around here, the guys that wanted to train, all were flocking to that gym. We built it crazy. And then 2 years later, a big money business guy wanted to buy it for his son that trained at the gym. And it was one of them, okay, here's your gym deal, right?
Yeah. Right.
Second Chance is still there to the day, but that was our gym. But that's when I was able to help a lot of people, especially when I seen a guy come in, a younger version of you, and he had good genetics, and I was watching him, and I'd be like, "Hey, man, let me show you a little bit something on your training. You're not a power lifter, bro. You're taking 3 minutes in between your sets. I can write a
Right.
book.
Yeah.
Let's go, man." And me, Jay, we were noted for that fast training. You're in,
Yeah. I know exactly
seated
what.
rows.
Yeah.
When Jay was getting out of the seated row, I was bumping into him, getting in there to do it. He was taking his breath, getting his breath back and everything, getting back. As soon as I'm out of there, bam, he's in. Them sets were like that. So you were building that endurance, that
Yeah.
that muscle fibers like that. And that's what just worked for guys like us. Branch, boom, right into it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I was showing these youngsters how to do that, and they were just surprised how it was changing them around.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
now when I travel and I don't really, when I'm on the road, I don't train with weights. I do my cardio every morning because I'm at all these shows. I got to get up early. I get the cardio in. I get the breakfast. Come 8 o'clock, all of our big Steve Weinberg, all of the judges are getting in the arena to do their thing. And then, I hold back, wait for Jim Manion to, hit me up for breakfast. I grab him and then we go into the arenas, right? So I'm on my feet all day. I don't get back to my room till midnight, long
Yeah.
days for
Sure.
me,
Yeah.
all
Those
of us,
shows
long
are
day.
they're a
Yeah,
long.
for all of us. So I don't train. I just hit the cardio in the morning and I don't go. But back in the day when I was signed by New Breed and I was at booths, oh, then we hit every great gym because I was still training crazy. And it was
Right.
great because I trained with everybody from Kai to Jay to Phil to Branch to, I got to train. And they used to, you could ask them, they'd be like, man, Mel trains, man. He gets after it because
Yeah.
that's how I watched and grew. And that's what them boys showed me.
Yeah, that you're a blessed man being able to train with the best guys in the world, man. Really, truly. Um,
And it just worked. I grew, like I said, 293 was that heaviest weight,
and
and all my
how tall are you?
5'10".
Oh, so that yeah. So you're a big boy. Yeah. I'm gonna throw up some pictures on this video, and you guys
Yeah,
out there will see just how
yeah.
big he was in his heyday. Did you ever compete?
So I competed. So when I came home from we used to say the college vacation when my grandbabies were young.
Yeah.
But when I came home from the penitentiary, the very first run, I went away in 98 and came home in 2001. I did some state time. I had to go do a little federal time, 14 months for the feds, very fast.
Hmm.
Came out of that. Jay was around and everybody was like, bro, you're 290 pounds. How come you're not competing? And I'm like, I don't know. I'm all tatted up. I just. Now I'm home in 2001. I'm still in the club, but I can't be around the club because I got a non-association from the feds.
Right. Right.
I can't see one. If I walked into a bar, walked into a restaurant, I'm the one who had to leave, or they were violating me, and they were on me because this was before they got me with the RICO. So
Okay.
they were watching and on me. So I had that time away, and I was training and training. And so one of my longtime friends, retired pro bodybuilder, Chuck Sano owns USA Gym in Chicago. That's where I would have all these guys come in and train Jay, and he's the chairman for us in Illinois. So he runs the shows there, and I'd get all these guys to come in and guest pose for him. Evan Centopani, you name it, Branch. I had them all there. Dennis James, Dennis Wolf. So I would get all them in for Chuck, and they'd give Chuck a good deal because of me, right? So I trained with him there. So I was like, all right. So in 2004, I did the Mr. Illinois and won the Mr. Illinois
Really?
as
Oh,
a
very cool.
heavyweight because there was no super yet.
Ah, yeah, 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 yeah.
So I was a heavyweight. There was no super. So I did that, won the show, and then shortly after that, I got indicted on RICO.
Ah, okay.
I went away, I came home, and then in 2009, they conned me into making a run for the pro card. And I kind of was like, man, I don't know if I want to do that as much as I'm a bodybuilding fan, but now I'm like 40.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
When I came home in '08 and I was like 40.
Did they have a Masters yet or not yet?
They did, but they're like, you can't go in the Masters because you're just so big, bro. You got to go in the Open. And they were all so. Anyways, I redid the Illinois, won the Illinois. I was on stage at 251 pounds at 5'10".
Wow.
You don't have any pictures of me from the stage?
No, I'll find them.
Yeah, I'll send them to you too, so you could throw
Okay.
up. And I won that. So everybody's like, pro card, go to nationals and everything like that. And I'm like, so 2011, Chad's in my ear and he's like, I got you. Let's do this, man. Bringing you down from 290. And he's like, you're going to be, 255, 260 this time around.
Right.
I said, okay. And I got totally sick. Sick meaning like the worst sinus infections. It was like I was dieting down. I was taking what I needed to take that I've never taken before. Them orals were never a friend of mine,
Oh,
like
they're the
all
worst.
bars. I got on some trend. I tried some trend. I never did any trend back when I was all in my 20s and
You were
getting
using
big
all the hardest stuff. Yeah.
that my body never used, bro, right?
Yeah.
I got on some growth hormone, which did me actually good because it made me eat even more.
Oh, that's good.
I was able to feed the machine constantly. So I had so
Yeah.
much dense muscles. Chad's like, I love the way you can eat. He goes, you can eat every 2 hours. It was great.
Okay.
But as soon as the diet started at 16 weeks, by the 12th week, John, I was constantly getting sinus infections, getting the flu. It was like my body was not happy with what I was doing.
Yeah, it's a big difference, guys like Dexter or William Bonac or whatnot, those are special athletes. Those are special guys. It's a big difference training for a show at 25 and 40. Huge difference.
Huge, huge.
It's not like, at 25, you bounce back like that.
Yeah.
Like I said, guys like Dexter, Bonac,
Yeah.
I mean, those are special, superior athletes. They come around once in a while.
And I missed the heyday. I trained like them, and that's how I was able to stay so big. Everything was an off season to me. I was never competing when I was,
Yeah.
running around with the club stuff. I was, I could eat what I wanted to because my body was staying lean from the growth hormone that Chad taught me how to do. I started taking 2 IUs in the morning and 2 IUs in the middle of the night. So
Yeah.
4 IUs of real growth hormone back in that
Yes.
day. And John, what that changed it around
Yeah.
completely for me. That was like what made that. I just got thick.
Yeah. Growth hormone. Um, you could change. You could see a difference in your appearance. And I tell people like this all the time. When you do a regular cycle, you do testosterone, Decadepol, it hits you like a ton of bricks in like 4 months.
For sure.
But with growth, it takes some time. But then you see it like a completely different body. It like literally changes your round muscle, your muscle fibers, you're thicker, you're harder. It's a completely like I have pictures of me on vacation when I was not using, growth hormone and you see me and I look pretty good. And then there are pictures where I was using growth hormone, like maybe 6 months before the vacation and I'm like, "Holy shit, that's that."
Yeah.
And that was the only difference, you're right. And it's a except that, a lot of people, it gets expensive. Growth is not cheap.
It gets expensive, and my dad was a real bad diabetic, so I used to get hypoglycemic spells a lot.
Mm,
So I couldn't even hold a bottle of insulin back in the day like the fellows could. I couldn't even touch one. I would go hypoglycemic if that 2 hour mark came. I would go low, and I'm talking pricking my finger where 80 to 120 is a normal blood sugar.
right.
I'd be in the 40s.
Wow.
I
Really?
had to eat, man. I disrupted if I was out with my friends and I'd be like this. They'd see me sweating, and I'm like, now,
Yeah. Oh,
you know.
yeah. 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 That,
So
it happens to me. My blood sugar drops, and I know I got to eat something with sugar and
yeah, your
whatnot.
metabolism, the body's not supposed to be doing that. So,
Yeah.
I could never, but the growth hormone kind of did it a little bit more, but it just,
Yes.
checked like it just made you eat faster, or you eat more. And I was able to eat and grow. I mean, like I said, getting up to that 293, and all my friends were like, bro, we want to see 300. These are all my non-bodybuilding friends, just my personal friends,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I said, guys, I can't put a pound on. God would literally have to come down and
Yeah.
touch
Yeah.
my shoulder to me
Yeah.
for me to put a pound on. I can't eat no more food. I
Yeah.
can't eat. I'll explode from how much food I was eating.
Right.
So funny thing is, I never seen the three. I seen the 293 is the heaviest I've seen my scale.
You could round it up. It's fine. I mean,
Yeah,
you know.
funny.
Um, I never interviewed Chad. I never met him. From what I know, he's a great coach. Obviously, like what he did with Ronnie Coleman. The rumor about Chad is that he really wants you to take a lot of anabolics. Is that accurate or no?
Well, I think with some of them top guys, right? And when you're, and I know these guys, and when they're coming to a Chad and to a Hani,
Right.
and when they're coming to these guys, they want to put their foot on the gas pedal because they all want to hit that Olympia stage. Or
Mm,
let's be honest, who ain't gunning for that when you're the top guys?
absolutely. Yeah.
And Knicks and all these guys, man, they want to make it to the top of the range there. So did I watch that climb? Yes. I remember the protocols back in the day when Chad was telling me about guys and stuff. And then, not too long ago. And I was
Yeah.
like, oh, guys are doing a lot, bro, in
Yeah.
many different compounds.
Yeah. It's different now between the peptides and the GH and the insulin. And
For
it's,
sure.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
It
No.
could be a lot. So, you know what I mean? But I don't think it's Chad's fault. I don't think it's these guys' fault. I don't think they're saying that Dave Palumbo's, Dave's people tell me, oh, Dave, why don't your foot on the gas pedal? He's going to do with what you're comfortable with.
Yeah.
And you're your own
It's free
person
will. You
too.
don't have to do what he wants you to do if you don't want to. The again, I heard through the grapevine, right?
Mhm.
Because I don't know Chad or Ronnie Coleman. I just heard through the grapevine through the bodybuilders and that I know in that world
Yeah.
that Chad would give Ronnie a list and Ronnie would like literally cut it in half. Like he wouldn't take 50% of what he told him. I don't know how true that is,
I don't,
but
I
this is what
don't,
I've heard.
I don't know how true that is either because
Yeah.
Ronnie, knowing Ronnie for the many years I've known him, watching him with Chad, I was up in his rooms. Chad'd be like, come on, we go check on Ronnie.
Uh,
And Ronnie listened to Chad to a T. One time we were all out to dinner. One
okay.
time we were all out to dinner afterwards, and we're all sitting there, and Chad goes to Ronnie, hey Ronnie, how many times you cheat on your diet? He goes, not once, Chad.
Yeah.
And Chad goes, see, he goes, right. He goes, not once, Chad. He goes,
Yeah.
Ronnie would do whatever. He ate whatever. We changed things on him. He did whatever. Listen to Chad to a T.
Yeah.
Was a machine. Chad goes, I never had to worry about him training. I knew how he trained. I never had to worry about him. Chad goes, I work with a lot of guys, and one ain't equaling two. And they're like, hey, John, what's going on here? I got you on this protocol, and this ain't happening here. And then the
Right.
guy, you got to be honest with your coach, and you got to say, man, I screwed up. I had, a rack of Oreos. I had people don't
Yeah, yeah,
understand
yeah, yeah,
when
yeah.
you're that dialed in. One cheat meal that you weren't supposed to have will stop the metabolism.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
It's a timing thing. People are like, oh, well, you had a cheeseburger and a fry out. You got to listen to Chad when he's ripping you down. We get me ready for them shows. He was like, all right, you're going on a full week right now with 50 grams of carbs for the day. You ready? And I go, yeah. I didn't know what that entailed, John,
Right.
until like day 4. I was passing my home up in my car. I was
Yeah. Yeah.
passing the street of my home up because it was so lethargic. Like I
Yeah.
smoked 20 joints and wasn't smoking. I was
Yeah.
like, wow, my mind. But it just pulled me flat as could be.
Yeah.
It was like the
Absolutely.
last, 2 or 3 weeks. It pulled me flat as could be. And he's like, okay, eat this now. And he
Right.
fed me up. And I was like, oh, what a process.
Yeah. Yeah. It's insane.
Definitely.
Today, I don't know about
Yeah.
back then, but I know today, there are a lot of prescription speed, if you will, that the guys will
Mm-hmm.
take that. Like, for example, like what's the one for when you can't concentrate that the kids use to study in college?
The Adderall.
Adderall, like that, for example, that's one of
Adderall.
them. Yeah, and they'll use something like that, so they could get through that, that low carb stage. But that's the problem. It's just it just compounds itself. It just adds and adds and adds. And people want to know why you see bodybuilders, or men and women that are dying because if you have an issue that you don't know about,
Yeah.
if you have a heart problem, or, a kidney problem, if you have some kind of blood issue that you don't know about because it never came out, you never had it checked, and then you start going hard on these things, it could really take a toll on you. And when
Yeah.
when you're young, you think you're indestructible, so you don't
Of
go get your
course.
blood. Now that I'm an old man, I get my blood work twice a year at least, and then I go to a cardiologist once a year to make sure that everything is ticking right.
Yeah, bro. You have to as we get older.
When
For sure.
during your peak, what were your best lifts? Like your bench, your squat, your deadlifts. What were your best lifts?
I was pretty strong I was built, I was thick, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know if you see it through the shirt. Big pec tear right there.
Yeah.
This one got a half a tear. This one. So I was a good, 405 bencher for 12, 15 reps.
Wow. Really?
Incline in 405 for reps. I was very strong. My upper body got so thick, right?
Right.
I
Right.
had
Right.
22-inch arms. I was so thick from front to back. My back was thick. My body was just good for bodybuilding.
Mm.
My problem was I had to jam my legs because my upper body grew so fast as I had to jam on my legs. I
Yeah.
had to
Yeah.
train the legs crazy where I had friends, the old Paul DeMeo, he could go in and do leg extensions and his
And that
legs
was
were,
it. Yeah.
I had to get under squat racks and hack squats and I was able to build them, but I had to kill them. Hence why they were the first thing that left me once I turned 40, 41. I couldn't train like
Yeah.
that. My legs split,
Yeah.
right? So I was pretty strong. But I always lifted with reps. I never did the 6 to 8 power lifting. I
Right.
always kept everything. I always warmed up. Them dudes showed me on my first set of anything. I'm going to use the low rope. My first set of low rope, they would make me do 30 reps.
Yeah. Yeah.
I put blood in that thing and I stretched that muscle out and they go, get that muscle to know what it's doing, get the mechanics down, then hit your sets. Then as I got older, I started watching what Dorian Yates was doing. He was doing the same thing.
Right. 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 Right.
He
Yeah.
did them few sets, but he warmed up to them.
Absolutely.
People
Yeah.
didn't know that.
Yeah.
They thought he went in there and did 2 sets and he was done.
Yeah. 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 No, that's that is a bodybuilder's way to train. That's it. You know,
Yeah.
um, I still do the same thing where I do a lot of warm up sets before I actually do a working set.
Yeah.
And then what's funny is that if I get to a point where like, oh, I feel pretty strong today, let me go a little stronger and let me go a little heavier. If I only get 4 or 6 reps out of it, I'll do a drop set immediately.
Yeah,
because I
yeah, for
didn't get,
sure.
to me, it didn't
No.
do anything, you know? So I'll do it
Need
drop set
that time
immediately.
under tension,
Right.
especially as we get older. I show a lot of guys,
Yes.
these other guys, they have a hard time letting I call it the ego go a little bit. And they're in the gym and they're still trying to get this weight. And you see them bouncing and jerking and
Yeah.
everything. And I'm like, man, guys, you're my age. You're going to rip something immediately. Lower the weight and get everything, pull it nice and, full control and everything like that. Time under tension is the
Yeah.
friend. You know what I mean? I always
100%.
tell people
Absolutely.
when I
There's
when I
no,
got in when I got in the penitentiaries, I was watching these dudes curl bags of water and basically rubber band stuff if it was a bad joint and they didn't have any weights,
yeah,
they were doing all stuff like that. The muscle don't have any eyes. It doesn't know if you're curling a 20-pound dumbbell or a 40-pound dumbbell. It goes by the tension, the time
that's
under
right.
tension. I was watching these guys train super slow and strict and just squeezing everything up. And I'm like, these guys got amazing physiques here in this
Yeah. Yeah.
penitentiary.
Yeah.
Eat ramen noodles and honey buns too, right?
Yeah.
So I learned that
That's
time
right.
and attention, and that was what worked great for me. I was never and listen, everybody knows that Branch is one of my longtime dear friends, a family member of ours. Him and his
That's
wife and his and
fantastic.
his
I actually had
family.
him on one too. He was a great interview. Yeah.
Yeah, he's a great dude. But that fast pace worked for him, I think, because he was
Yeah.
a little shorter. You know how Branch trained, bouncing things off his
Yeah.
chest and moving that way. It worked for him. People are like, he got some injuries, of course, but
Yeah.
his were all outside the gym. But long
Yeah.
story short, you got to find what works for you. Ronnie was trained to train the body part twice a week.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
I could never do that.
There are guys like a Branch, like Ronnie Coleman. They could pretty much do anything and it works for them. They are special. Lee Priest is another guy. We've had this conversation before, and I tell Lee, I'm like, do you realize that you're 0.00001% of the population that could just look at weights and grow? And then the younger guys, I'm like, don't do what these guys do, because they can do anything and grow. It's completely different. It is. Ronnie Coleman was in my opinion, the perfect storm because he had the genetics and he had the work ethic as well. And it was the greatest genetics plus the greatest work ethic, and you just couldn't think of a better combination. It was just once in a lifetime. For me, he's the greatest bodybuilder that ever lived.
Agreed. Ronnie's the GOAT. Ronnie was on the stage with a whole new level of conditioning, them
Yeah.
strided glutes that look like, the starfish.
Yeah.
Took it to a whole nother level. Another youngster that came up that had the perfect storm, and he was another dear friend of mine, and Dallas McCarver.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
He
Yeah. Yeah.
had the
Yeah. Very
work
sad.
ethic, trained like Ronnie, trained like a horse, eat like a horse. Everything fell into place for him. That dude was going to be Mr. Olympia one day, and obviously, it was cut short. And
Yeah. It's unfortunate. It really is. Did he have a heart issue that I didn't know about?
yeah, yeah, bro.
Yeah,
Everything kind of
it
all
really is. It's unfortunate. Yeah, he was definitely, but another guy who could have really been. I mean, it wasn't due to any kind of internal problems, but Luke Sandow. I don't know if you remember Luke Sandow.
Yeah, yeah. I know Luke well. I knew Luke well back in the days of
He
Redcon and
had the
era.
makings of a Mr. Olympia, and he was. You never know what goes on behind closed doors with people. They may look like they're made of steel, but internally things could be there. For people who don't know, Luke Sandow was a great bodybuilder, and then I can't say the word on YouTube, but he self-deleted during COVID.
Yeah,
Um, and it
yeah.
was really sad because he really had the makings
Oh,
of a
yeah.
great bodybuilder. He really did.
So
But
thick and dense and good. He loved the sport too.
what do you give me your top five greatest bodybuilders of all time? I'm writing my down, but
Wow.
right now that I'm thinking, but I want to know what yours are.
Well, Ronnie first and foremost.
Right.
Flex Wheeler.
Really? Okay.
Uh, yeah, amazing bodybuilder. Flex Wheeler was winning the Olympia, but like he says, and if you know his story, he introduced Chad to Ronnie.
Yeah.
Said it was okay the story. Said it was okay for Chad to work with Ronnie,
That's
and
gotta suck.
Ronnie beat him at the '98 Olympia.
Yeah. Came
That's
out of
when Ronnie
nowhere. I think he was like, yeah, I don't know. Yeah. Did
he
he
was
break the
ninth
top
or
10?
10th the year before.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Beat Flex. It was like Flex's show, and he beat him. So Flex is like, my big mouth. I hooked him up with Chad, and we kind of laugh about it. But he was such a good put together bodybuilder. His body
Yeah.
was like
Phenomenal.
touched from from God himself, So he definitely him, Ronnie, Flex Wheeler. Um, you got to give it to Lee Haney for his what he was doing back in the day,
Agreed.
another
Absolutely.
eight time, and him, you know, let's size it down a little bit. But look at like back in my day, what I say, look at Lee Labrada. Even
Yeah.
obviously he was much shorter than me, but the way Lee was put together in the magazines, man, it just caught my eye. So I got to go back to there, and then then you start getting into Dorian took it to another level.
Mm.
He was like coming out of nowhere. I had his video VCR, put it in the tape machine,
Everybody
right?
had it. Yeah.
Blood and
Everybody had it.
guts.
Yeah.
And I trained exactly what he did for them body parts, right? I've got chest today. I would get home, I would be home, I'd drink a little Ultimate Orange. That was the top
Oh
hot
God, I
thing back
remember
in
that.
the
Yeah.
day.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Duchesne's Ultimate Orange, it was like straight crack, probably.
Yeah.
They took that off the
Yeah.
market.
Yeah.
I'd drink the Ultimate Orange. I'd watch Dorian. I'd get to the gym and I would train like that, bro. I'd be and my training partners would be like, man, Mel's killing us. And
Yeah.
everybody grew. So, in them orders, there's so many of
Yeah.
them, more than five,
Yeah.
but the
Yeah. Yeah.
old school dudes to me stuck out because that was
Yeah.
the game.
I have. I mean, just to let you know, my top five, and it hasn't changed in the last couple of years. Is Ronnie was one, Arnold was two, Lee Haney I have in third, Phil, and then Dorian. Right. But here's the question: Lee Haney doesn't get enough credit. And I can't, for the life of me, I have a little bit of a theory why, but I, for the life of me, I can't understand why he doesn't get enough credit. Like young kids know who Arnold is, they know who Ronnie is, they know who Dorian is. But when you say Lee Haney, they almost like they never heard of him. And this is an 8-time Mr. Olympia.
Oh, I think it's because the generation is too gone. He was way back then, right?
Yeah.
Look, yeah, I flipped the magazines to him. So I looked up to him. I see so many guys now that don't, like you said, they'll walk right past him when we stand in there. I was one time I was at a big national show with Lee and we were standing together, me and him, because I told you last night on the phone, I looked up to him.
Yeah.
He'd been married to his wife for all the years, faithful, loves the Lord. Same with Lee Labrada, married to one girl, one wife, the whole 9 yards. And here's me running around with harems and doing what I'm doing in the biker world. And
Right.
I'm looking at these guys like, that's cool. That's the epitome. I didn't live that life, but I tell them, we laugh and joke about it now because, they tell me, Mel, your faith is inspiring to us. And I'm like, man, you guys were the guys I looked up to.
Right.
So we were at a national show and I'm standing there and these young bodybuilders came up and they're like, hey, Mel, can we get a picture with you? And I'm thinking, you don't even know who I'm standing with right here.
Unbelievable, man.
You wouldn't
Unreal.
be
It
asking me for the
blows me
picture.
away. Here's my theory. I think personally, there's just like even with Ronnie, there was so much footage. There's video footage. You can look him up on YouTube, right? Phil was the first guy that really was the social media uh, Mr. Olympia. Jay too. There's plenty of footage of Jay. There's plenty of
Yeah,
behind the scenes stuff. When it comes to and Arnold, of course, it's because he's a big movie star and so on and so forth.
yeah,
But when it comes to Lee Haney, there's not a lot of footage of him.
you're
And
correct. I think you're right.
yeah, and so when people look up, bodybuilders, like I've had people like young guys or even guys that are just getting into bodybuilding and who they like, who's this guy Ronnie Coleman, and I'll tell them who he is or whatever the case may be, but they never ask for Lee. And it's my opinion that there's just not enough footage of him. He doesn't get enough exposure, and
You're right.
he's also not like Jay Cutler has this amazing ability to stay relative even when he's retired from bodybuilding. He has an absolutely amazing ability. He's doing his own podcasts and he's all over TikTok and
Supplement lines,
I don't know how he does it. And when you
clothing,
meet him, he makes you feel like that he makes you feel like you've known him for 20 years, Yeah, I went to the Olympia and
one
we
of the
waited
best.
online. Yeah, we made it. Me and my wife waited online for about 30 minutes or so, and I went to go take a picture with him. And then he brought my wife over and he's like, no, 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 you waited in line too. Come on, let's take a picture. Couldn't be nicer. And I think it really, I think the ability, his personality and his ability to come across on social media really serves him well. It really does. Well, Lee, kind of, I don't know. I think he's just not and doesn't
Yeah,
have that touch.
brought up a great point. It was before the time, before the media time. It was the flipping the magazines. That's how you had to see them guys, or go somewhere they were guest posing.
Right.
Kind of why there's no guest posers no more. We don't need guest posers at shows like Buy and stuff because you're seeing all these people on every video, YouTube and everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
Kind of burnt it out. They can follow their workouts, see them, boom, boom, boom.
It's the truth.
Back in
It
the day,
really is.
you brought a guest poser to your show, you're going to pay him the $5,000, $6,000 he wanted because he was going to bring you hundreds of people to the venue.
That's right. Yeah. 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 I remember going to shows just because Matarazzo was guest posing or Lee Priest was
Yeah,
guest posing,
yeah, yeah,
or every year Steve Weinberger at the Atlantic States would have the number one and number two Mr. Olympia runner up and winner, and we would go just to see them.
for
Um,
sure, for sure.
just a couple more questions, and then I'll let you go, man. How did you get into promoting? Because how many shows do you have now?
We have three.
3 shows.
April, August, and December
Okay.
is the three. The April's the Mel Chancey Champion Muscle. August is the Mel Chancey Harbor Classic. December is the Mel Chancey Holiday Classic.
Hmm.
So three. I got into promoting from my relationship with Jim, and when I moved from Chicago here 10 years ago to Florida, he said to me, he goes, Mel, you're in a great spot right there. You want to promote a show? And I said, man, brother, that's great, boss. And I appreciate you there, but I don't know how to do it.
Yeah.
My wife don't know how to do it. I wouldn't know what to do. And he goes, well, you're tight with Tim Gardner because he's right next to you in Tampa. He goes, let me call up Tim. He called up Tim. He goes, hey, Tim. He goes, I'm giving Mel a sanction here. And that's before Tim was the chairman and I was running the show. And he said, he goes, do you want to get in there and help him? And he said, yeah. And he said, okay. And then I called Tim on the phone. I knew him for years. I called Tim on the phone and I said, hey, Tim, me and you 50-50. You run the show. I'm just going to show up, get the sponsors. You don't ask me about anything. You get the medal.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You just run the show. And we just had our 10 years a couple of weeks ago. April 5th was the
Oh,
show.
you're still partners with him.
I'm still partners with Tim on that first one.
That's fantastic.
He is my partner on that. The August and December one, it's just me and Melissa because she runs the back end now. Because through the years, she got to know everything that was going on, right?
Right.
Because getting in there and helping Tim and getting her feet wet. And then I had the opportunity to start the August one. Me and her did it. Had the opportunity to do the December one. That Holiday Classic is the biggest show in all the states around here, John.
Is it real? I was about to ask because you would think that in the middle of December, nobody would want to do it.
December 21st last year, 4 days before Christmas. Ready for these numbers? We did 300 and like 2 or 3 hard. We did 570 something crossovers.
Really?
1,000 people in the seats for the nighttime show. 400 and something at the pre-judging. John, it's insane how this show just took.
And they were all national qualifiers?
All national qualifiers. So they can qualify at the end of the year and they can go to a national show if they win mine and the whole through the season.
That's fantastic. There used to be a Mr. Staten Island. There isn't anymore. I got to look into promoting a Mr. Staten Island show. That was the first show I ever did was Mr. Staten Island. And I won my class.
Steve Weinberger territory there. He's the chairman.
Yeah. I would have to talk to him and
talk to Steve. But yeah, so that's how that all started, and what an amazing journey it's been to have our shows. Tim's always going to be my partner because he was there for me on day one when I didn't know what to even, what a stage was, putting up a stage was, he was there. And we just celebrated our 10 years and it was amazing together, and so that's how that happened. Jim was like, let's go. And it's just been so cool. And it's been great to watch my wife grow into it. I mean, everybody now knows her on the Chancey Fitness site.
Yeah.
She's at the front desk with the tickets.
Yeah.
John, if I had $1 every time I'm at these shows and somebody comes up and an athlete or a family member says, man, your wife took such good care of us through this whole process because she's in them when they're coming in, when they're registering. Some people go to register, they register for a show, something happens to them and they can't do the April show and they say, hey, we had a family emergency or whatever. There's no refunds in this business, but we let them say, okay, we can't refund you the money, but you can come and do August.
Right.
Some promoters would say there's no refunds, but we honor that. And I'm hoping people ain't just backing out because they weren't in shape. That's not fair for us as the promoter. You know what I mean? But most of the time, the people really have a legit excuse. My wife can hear it in them, and she transfers them over. So I say I had $1 for every time somebody said that Melissa took care of them. I'd be on a cruise, right? So it's just amazing how that Chancey production grew. And then I'm at all the shows, I'm taking pictures and laughing and joking and opening them up in prayer and fellowshipping with the brothers and sisters, and they love it, bro. It's just a real amazing atmosphere.
That's fantastic. I say it all the time. If you have a good woman by your side, it's sky's the limit. If you have a bad woman by your side, man, you're not going to go anywhere. You're going to go down, if anything.
It says it in the Bible. It says it says it in the Bible in the Old Testament. It says a quarrelsome wife is like a constant drip on a tin roof. You know how that would drive you nuts?
It's the truth.
It says it in the Bible. God
The
told us
God's
that.
listen, instinct doesn't change. It is what it is.
Yeah. So it's
One more question, and I'm going to let you
yeah.
go. It's been an honor to have you on, honestly,
Thank
really.
you, bro. I appreciate this.
So now you have a project that's in the makings where they're going to be making your life story.
Making my life story. So that project came about with the $7 production company, Dwayne The Rock Johnson's company, came up there about 5 years ago. Me and Dwayne were talking. I've known Dwayne for some many years, and we were talking about my story. And he said, "Listen, I'd love to tell your story." So we got together. He hooked me up with their project, a guy that's running it by a guy that by the name of Frank. He was like now my family member after 5 years too. And he said, "Let's do it." So we started talking about a documentary because now this was, when COVID was first starting, and the Lion or the Tiger King, all these documentaries started being huge because the world was locked down.
That's right.
So he goes, "I'm going to put the A team together for you, Mel." And I go, "I'm sure you are, DJ, right?" So we got Billy Corbin, who's writing the documentary, and that's Cocaine Cowboys, Billy Corbin,
Oh, wow.
Square Grouper, 30 for 30, Screwballs. Billy is an amazing documentary writer, and his partner Alfred. So we already have that logged in. The documentary is about ready to get pitched out there for where it's going to go right now. We got that, all the I's dotted and T's crossed. Working on the documentary, Dwayne said, "We got to tell the scripted story of your life. I want, a scripted part, a movie part, maybe a series, a movie. We're not sure yet. This was 5 years ago."
Right.
So we were all laughing, and he's like, "I got to find, an A-list actor to play you." And everybody's like, "Well, you're not going to find nobody that's 300 pounds." And that was
Yeah,
our
really.
joke, right? So he started thinking about it, and out of the blue, he calls me one day and he goes, "I think I got the perfect person." I said, "Who, Dwayne?" And he said, "I did a movie with him, and he's a great writer. He's a great producer, actor. He could play the old gritty you and he could play the now you." And I said, "Who?" And he goes, "John Bernthal,
Yeah.
Punisher John and everything." And I started laughing. And he goes, "What are you laughing about?" And I said, "I know you don't see a lot of social media. You're the busiest dude, period." I said, "But about 9 months ago, I put an Instagram picture up with me and John." He
Oh,
goes, "You know him?" And I said, "Of course I do." And I go, "And I'm going to tell you how. My partner at Core Medical, Sid Gordon, and John are brother-in-laws." And I go, "Now I'm going to blow your mind some more, DJ. They both married Kurt Angle's nieces,
oh, Jesus. Okay.
sisters, because Dwayne and Kurt are like this. They're
Oh,
tight."
okay. All
And
right.
he goes, "Wow, Mel, you're blowing my mind." He goes, "Because I was thinking of a way to make sure." He goes, "I want you to feel comfortable with this project. DJ's always been so supportive of me and, really, I mean, just loving of it."
Good.
And he said, "This is your story. We have to tell it right." He goes, "And how am I going to tell this guy? I want to make sure he likes John. If you don't like John, we're going to go find somebody else." And he goes, "And you already know him." I go, "Yeah, brother, it's great." So John is playing me in the movie of
That
my
he
life
plays a
story.
great tough guy. I mean, he really does play a great tough guy.
Shot caller, the prison show, the shot
Absolutely.
caller
Even when he
movie.
was in Wolf of Wall Street,
Yes.
he played a great tough. The only thing is, we were talking a little bit. He's gonna have to put some muscle on.
Put some muscle on. So he's so excited because he's a method actor and he always got this thing, now John's been part of this project now for the last probably going on 4 years of a
Okay.
five. We've been doing it 5 years, 4 years. We got him about a year and a half in. So, being, family with him and everything, he's like, "Okay, little Mel," he calls my wife little Mel, Melissa, "Little Mel, you're going to feed me. You're going to train me. He's going to come here, spend some time with me." So one time, Rock DJ tells him, "Listen, John, if we put 20 pounds on you, you're tall and lean." John's a little taller than me. He's about probably 5'11",
Okay.
right 6 foot, 190 pounds. DJ tells him, "We put 20 pounds on you and the camera angles, you're going to look big on there." And John goes, "No, no, 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 no. I'm going to put 40, 50 pounds on. And we're like, no, we can't. We're not trying to kill you.
That's
You
not.
got to stay
Yeah,
healthy to play this part, right? We're trying to keep you got a family. We're not trying to
yeah,
kill
yeah.
you, right?
Right, 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 right.
So that's kind of the joke that John's like putting the size on. And I said to him recently, we were all on this event together, and I said, I said, I seen before when you did the mustache and stuff, you played in a part like that. And he goes, you know what I'm looking forward to the most with you, Mel, studying you and playing you. And I go, what's that? He goes, that accent. I go, that accent. He goes, you got a Chicago accent. You know that,
Chicago
of course,
accent.
we don't hear
Yeah,
our own accents, right?
yeah, yeah. No, if you watch, what was the movie that came out with Tom Hardy? Um, the Bike Riders.
Oh, the bike riders about
The
the outlaws. Yeah.
Yeah, the biggest problem I had with it was Tom Hardy like had a Brooklyn accent and he had a Chicago accent, but the girl that played that was telling the story, she nailed that Chicago accent. I think she's from the UK too.
He did too.
Yeah, and you hear they made sure that the majority of those they probably just wanted Tom Hardy in it because it was Tom Hardy, right?
Yeah.
Uh,
Oh,
but
yeah.
but that was the one thing that I was annoyed at because I say this all the time. When I'm watching a movie or a show, I need a little reality in my fantasy, right?
Yeah.
And if
Yeah.
you're supposed to be from Chicago, at least learn to talk like a Chicago person. If you're from New York, at least have a New York accent. You know what I mean? Like even in Wolf of Wall Street, the girl was from Australia. I forgot her name, and
Yeah.
she nailed that Brooklyn accent. It sounded like my sister-in-law, for Christ's sake.
It's so crazy. It's like Jax from Sons of Anarchy. He's from what got that whatever his Australia or whatever his
Right.
accent is, and he talked in perfectly like he was from California. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
So
Well, I can't wait till for that to come out because that should be very good. I just hope the hands that are in it don't make it too woke. I hope they stick to the real story because sometimes, John Bernthal was in that sequel to The Sopranos, and they really made it a little woke, and it was like,
I I'm pretty confident with this one because the story's pretty much kind of written in 5 years. There's the content's there. So whatever writer that they're, interviewing now and they're going to pick has all this content. And from day one, Dwayne said, we are not sure. The motorcycle story is the motorcycle story. The years of my penitentiary, the war with the outlaws, that's always, with the journey. But he goes, it's a faith-based journey because what I do now, because that's the
perfect,
inspiration.
perfect.
No, we're not getting off that. If somebody told us we like all this other stuff but the faith thing, we'd be like, next. And
Right.
Dwayne told me
Good,
that from
good.
the beginning. And that's how it is with the documentary. It's that arc. Yeah, that whole crazy past of my life that I lived and the 300 pounds and the violence and the war and everything like that. The penitentiaries where I reconnected with the Lord. Me and you talked, we're both Catholic boys, altar
Right, right.
boys, the whole 9 yards. We knew the Lord.
Mhm.
I just split on him for 15 years, the prodigal son. Then I got in the penitentiaries and I said, I want to come home.
Right, right, right,
Here
right.
I am, So they're very strict on that part, which is good because, otherwise, if it was just a motorcycle story, you could get anybody that was in a one percenter club that was involved in some stuff. And we all kind of got the similar stories, right? If you're fighting with a club and you go to prison for RICO or you're doing this and doing that, anybody could tell that. But I don't like to, it's my story. So it's weird for me to say it, but I don't see too many guys that said, I'm done. Lord, you take my life.
Right.
Funny story. When I came home from the RICO thing in 2008, my childhood friend that introduced me to Melissa back in the day,
Mhm.
my phone. He gives me my phone like this. He goes, here. And I go, what's that for? And he goes, well, I know you're going to go get a new phone, but all your contacts were in it. I took it out of his hand. His name's Jamie. I took it out of his hand and I threw it in the garbage can. And he goes, what'd you do that for? I go, I'm going to let God build my phone book organically. I know my mother's number, my daughter's number, everybody I need to know, I'm going to put in there. He's going to build that. And that's what I did. I gave him that full surrender, John, and said, you bring me. I never thought I'd be living in Florida. I'm a Chicago boy for
Right.
41 years. I never thought I would be coming here. When I first visited here, I'm like, what? Your town closes up at midnight? I'm in running my nightclubs in Chicago eating sushi at 2:30 in the morning.
Yeah, yeah, that's
I'm
right.
like, what's going on here? I don't ever want to move here. Now I never want to leave here. It just became great. Hulk's been trying to get me to move out to, because he's in Clearwater. Terry's been trying to get me to move out here back in the 90s. And I'm like,
Yeah.
no way, I'm not coming to Florida. Now it's my hub. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
Well, since you brought it up quickly, I totally forgot. How do you wind up knowing Hulk Hogan?
so I met Hulk through another guy in the club. back in 94. There's an old picture. I don't know if you've seen it, the old picture of me and Terry back from that. I'm going to hold it up on here. It's an old school picture. So I met him when I was, the 300 pounds running the club. If you could see that picture right there,
Yeah. 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 Okay. Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
us right there. That's me meeting them and everything like that.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I was a huge wrestling fan, and
yeah, me too.
for people who don't know, Hulk Hogan made wrestling twice. He made it once for Vince McMahon, and then he made it once for in WCW,
Sure.
Ted Turner. And he had the NWO, and there was like some kind of special event, like a pay-per-view event that they were holding, and they were the bad guys. And you and a bunch of other guys in the club led them out into the ring on your motorcycles. And I remember watching it because I was a huge wrestling fan. I'm like, oh, that is the greatest thing in the world. That's awesome.
And shortly right after that, I went to my trial started for my first time, in '97, and I was on a bond. I was out on a bond, and I couldn't leave the county that I was from.
Mm.
It was a state case, and I was getting ready to start trial, and they told me you couldn't leave the county. And when Terry called me up and told me what they wanted to do, I said, "Where are you doing it at?" He goes, "Knoxville." And I got, damn, I'm on this thing. And he goes, "Oh, I don't want to get you in no trouble." I go, "Well, listen, we're doing the Monday Night Nitro. It's a Monday night." I go, "I start trial the next Monday. What are they going to do? Lock me
Right.
up? I'm here. We've been showing up for 14 months. We were fighting the case from the street."
Right.
So we went and did that ride around with them the whole time, about, 15, I think, of us from the club, right?
Yeah.
Them guys rode around. I go home 2 days later. We walk into the courtroom, and there's three of us on trial, three that were the Hells Angels that run trial.
Mhm.
And the state's attorney brings in rolls in a TV, and she
Okay.
starts the thing off. The judge gets in. She goes, "Your Honor, we want to revoke Mr. Chancey's bond. Here he is in Knoxville, Tennessee on Monday night. You told him not to leave the county." Oh, they tried to make a big deal of it. The
Uh,
judge said to the lady afterwards, he said, "Listen, I forget her name." He goes, "Listen, Miss So and so, these guys been showing up for 14 months straight.
okay.
We got their bond. They're starting trial today. If it don't go right for them by Thursday, they're going to be locked up anyways.
Right.
I'm not revoking their bond today."
Okay.
So it was funny because Hulk's like, "Man, I didn't mean to get you in trouble." I said, "I knew we were coming out there." So it was funny because I did a podcast with a good friend of mine, and he was like, "Yeah, not to be covert
Yeah.
by Chancey. Go on national TV on wrestling when you're out on a bond and just do your thing." So it was kind
That's
of fun.
fantastic.
It was pretty cool, and I've remained friends, and I'm friends with Terry today. He lives about an hour and a half from me, and I get to
That's
walk
great.
around him all the
Yeah,
time.
that's fantastic. Uh, Mr. Chancey, thank you. It's a pleasure. It's an honor. I really am grateful that you came on. Truly, much respect, much love, and continued success to you. And I'm going to end the interview, but just hang on for 1 second because I just want to ask you one thing,
Okay.
and we're good. But once again, thank you so
Thank you,
much.
bro. I appreciate it.